I'd like to call the meeting to order. Rebecca, will you please call the roll?
Gandy,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Council, are there any changes to the agenda tonight? If not, let's go on to the consent agenda. Approval of the minutes of the April 27th, 2020 council meeting. Approval of May 1, 2020 payroll in the amount of $115,416.33. Resolution of authorization of fund transfer. Resolution of employment in the fire department. Resolution of wage increase in the fire department. Resolution of employment in the water department. Acceptance of the Economic Development Committee minutes of April 27, 2020. Acceptance of the Personnel Committee minutes of May 5th of 2020. Approval of liquor license for Quality Quick Stop. BPO Elks Lodge 1192 ownership. BPO Elks Lodge number 1192. Fairfield area number 1927, Fraternal Order of Eagles, and approval of claims in the amount of $895,442.30, and claims over $75,000 include Maxwell Construction of $670,988.14. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Gandy.
Second.
Second by Toohill. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Gandy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Flournoy.
Yes.
Okay, that was approved unanimously. Under public appearances, we have the class of 2020 parade. Tammy Thomas, is she calling in, or what's happening here?
No, you were going to call her.
Oh.
I gave you her number.
Grab Dave. I didn't.
Okay, we're gonna call Tammy.
Yeah. You have more Sean?
919. 18.
You know what? Call her phone.
Like she's gonna answer me.
Let's do this the easy way. You call.
Do we need to abstain from this vote?
No.
You sure? Yeah. So she knows she's on.
Hey Tammy, this is Aaron Quaker. I made Dave call you, so you're on speakerphone. I'm going to put you in front on a mic so that you can talk to the council about the
Senior
parade.
parade.
Okay,
Go ahead.
okay. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Hope you're all well this evening. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the parade that the senior class parents are trying to put together. I've talked to Chief Thomas and Lieutenant Kinsella, and they seemed maybe more excited about it than we are, which we love. We would like to start the parade route out at the ag grounds. Excuse me. And from the ag grounds, we would come out to Burlington and go down to 6th Street, go south on 6th Street down to Fillmore. From Fillmore, we would go east to D Street, and then north on D Street to Madison. And we would turn back east on Madison and go to Highland, north on Highland to Broadway, west on Broadway, clear up to Main Street. And then from Main, go south to Burlington, and then back west to the ag grounds. We thought that would be a long route, so it would give plenty of opportunity for people to be along the route and make signs and that kind of thing, and social distance. Corin Hinshaw has taken it upon himself to do a tremendous effort in helping to donate trailers and drivers, so that he's going to have about 20 to 25 trailers available for us so that all the kids could ride on the back of a flatbed trailer. We will be practicing social distancing, and we'll ask everyone along the way, the people that are observing, to do their part as far as social distancing.
May 22nd,
What day of the week is that?
Friday. It's the Friday before what was scheduled to be graduation.
Do we have police escort for this?
Yes, police, fire, and EMS are all gonna help.
Several area fire departments are also going to help us out because they have seniors. We didn't even think about it, but Chief Scott Vaughn mentioned it, so we've extended it to all the county emergency services. So,
A motion to approve?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve this parade on May 22nd. It was moved by Flournoy, second by Rasmussen. Any other discussion?
Do I need to abstain from this vote?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
thanks.
Do I need to abstain because I have a vested interest in it?
No, you don't
You
have.
don't have
I don't
financial
think, you're not
interest.
profiting from this, I don't
Okay,
think
yeah,
so.
I think you're fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
as long as you don't
so-
have a financial interest, you don't have to.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, that was passed unanimously. And we look forward to a parade for our 2020 graduates on May 22nd.
Just as a question, when will the banners be up?
I just talked to Josie Hannes today. She's putting in the order, and it's probably going to be, like I said, it's going to be closer to June 1.
Not in time for this parade?
Probably not. We actually found out that we're also going to have to do some modifications to the banner stands on the new poles. The new poles are at 60 some inches wide for the two poles that are there, or the rods. Our old ones are 72. So we're going to have to, in the future, we're going to have to look at getting new banners for all those new poles anyway, because that looks better than what modifying them anyway. So, but for now, we can modify them to make it work with the old dimensions. Per Joe Hurd.
Okay, let's move on to resolution action items and ordinances. The first is an action item setting a public hearing for the fiscal year 20 budget amendment for our next council meeting on Tuesday, May 26th, 2020 at 7 p.m. You want to say anything about that, Aaron?
Yeah, what we're doing is back when we set the budget, we didn't realize that the backfill dollars that were coming in didn't come in the right spot. So we're adjusting our budget so that we can have those go into the right spot, so then we can use those dollars to pay what the bond that we used for the downtown lighting is essentially all we're doing with that.
Okay, any further questions? Take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Gandy, second by Flournoy. Any other discussion? Not, please call the roll.
Gandy,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, that was approved unanimously. The next action item is consideration of proposed engineering services agreement with Klinger and Associates for Fairfield Arts and Convention Center evaluation inspection. And Melanie's going to talk about that.
Good evening. During the budget process, the Fairfield Arts and Convention Center approached the Ways and Means Committee about taking on future improvements or repairs to the building. During that time, we discussed how we can prioritize those improvements, and it was suggested that we do a feasibility study of the entire center, getting a second opinion on the condition of the HVAC equipment, the structural, the roof repairs, and then using that second opinion to help prioritize any future funding. We did a similar, or the city had Klinger and Associates do a similar study for the Carnegie Building, and we were very happy with the results that we were able to get at a very economic price. So what we're bringing for you tonight is a proposal from Klinger and Associates for $9,500 to do this evaluation. This is a budgeted item in next year. Klingner is looking for some work right during this time, and they will not be billing us until after the fiscal year.
Is this about the same price that we did for the Carnegie building?
Very close. It's actually half what we had budgeted. We were expecting it to be more expensive, but it's closer to what Carnegie cost.
Great, thank you.
Is this within what we had allocated in lost funds?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually,
It's less
like
than.
she just said,
About half.
we budgeted 20,000
That's what I thought. Okay.
and it's only 9,500.
What is, what's the estimation for the expenses portion? It's not, they said 9,500 plus expenses, so
Oh, mileage? Oh, I did not print off that sheet.
just
I
ballpark,
apologize.
$1,000 or
Yeah.
somewhere
Yeah,
around there?
they'll do it in one trip. They'll be here this week, so there would not be a lot of expense.
So I'd move,
Yeah.
move approval.
Second.
Okay, moved by Flournoy, second by Anderson. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ham.
Yes.
Okay, great, that's been approved unanimously to approve the agreement to have the Arts and Convention Center be evaluated and have an inspection of the building. Next action item, consideration of awarding proposed intersection improvements 9th Street and Burlington.
So this project you guys have not seen since we did the initial DOT application and receiving the funds. About 2/3 of this project is paid for through DOT, through a DOT safety grant. This project is for sidewalk and pedestrian improvements at 9th and Burlington. We are moving the crosswalk from the center of the intersection to the outside of the intersection, as well as putting in ADA compliant curb ramps and push button pedestrian signals. And then those signals will also, the heads will be upgraded and it'll have the audible signal on that as well. So lots of improvements happening there. Because it was under the threshold, it was not a formal bid, but we did take informal quotes on this project. We received 2 quotes, one from Wesley Barton of Mount Pleasant at $79,825, and a second from Jones Contracting of West Point, Iowa at $168,777.00. Wesley Barton has done work in this community before. His estimate is close to the engineer's estimate. We don't feel like he's left anything out of his bid, so we would recommend awarding it to Wesley Barton of Mount Pleasant.
I move we award the 9th Street Burlington intersection work to, what's the name of the company in Mount Pleasant?
Wesley Barton.
Wesley Barton.
It's been moved by Flournoy,
Second.
second by Toohill. Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Aye, yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Okay, that was approved unanimously to award that contract to Wesley Barton to fix the 9th Street and Burlington Avenue improvement. Next action item, consideration to accept Stone Avenue and 8th Street water main replacement project as final.
This project was awarded last fall to DeLong Construction of Washington, Iowa. They did quick work in the fall and got the work done prior to the end of the calendar year. This spring, they had some concrete work to finish up as well as doing the seating. Myself, DeLong, and Steve Redinger from the Water Department reviewed the project last week, and we would recommend accepting the project as final, which would begin the 2-year warranty period.
Any questions, council?
Move to approve.
Okay, it's been moved by Rasmussen,
Second.
second by Flournoy. Any other questions? If not, please call the roll.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Okay, that was approved unanimously to accept that project as final on 8th Street, the water main replacement. Next action item, consideration of awarding the solid waste and recycling contract. Aaron?
Well, we actually received one request for proposal, or one RFP from Waste Management. We sent it out to our other local garbage hauler, and I also put it on the Iowa League of Cities website to see if there was any other interest in it. We've got the proposal, so I would recommend accepting the accepting the request for proposal, but we don't have a contract at this point, so we need to refer that to environmental and franchise to set up the contract talk with Waste Management.
Aaron, this is
Yes.
something different, right? What we have in front of us is something different. This is like solid waste collection and recycling. Is this the proposal?
Yes, that's
Is
the
it a response?
proposal.
So you're recommending that what do you?
Accept the RFP as it's been put in, but this is not the contract. We
Okay.
have to we have to have a contract to accept in the future, and that's what environmental and franchise needs to sit down and discuss.
Normally environmental franchise looks over the contracts before they're approved by council.
Okay, all right. So there's no contract to review
No,
at this point.
this is just a proposal. They have two different bids. One is current service. The other is adding a 64-gallon cart, which we've looked at before. And,
What does it mean to accept a proposal?
well,
Yeah.
just accept that we've got it.
Okay,
It's a,
We're not accepting these prices,
okay.
right?
No, we're not accepting that at this point.
That was my
Because that's
concern.
going to be the contract.
well, instead of using the word accept, why don't we just say we refer this to
Or
environmental
refers it to
franchise,
environmental franchise. That's
so we
fine,
can
too.
Yeah.
come back to council with a contract offer to waste management and to counter this proposal. I haven't read it yet, so.
That would seem to make better if we could refer it to committee rather than accept something that we don't have reviewed.
The verbiage is probably not on my part, so that's fine.
Okay, so I'll move that we refer this offer to environment and franchise for consideration.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Floney, second by Gandy to refer this proposal to the Environmental and Franchise Committee. Any other questions? If not, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was approved unanimously. The next item is consideration of amended emergency procedures for contagious disease policy. Aaron?
Judy, do you want to talk about what we talked about in personnel first, or as part of this, or do you want me to do it?
Why don't you do it as one whole thing?
Okay.
Great.
We met as personnel committee last week. As the governor has eased some restrictions, I asked both Calvin and Rebecca from the library to put in proposals to start looking at opening up their buildings to the general public. You have in front of you, I believe, the proposal from the rec department. The library is not ready to open up, and their board has not met. They will not meet until the next week, the 18th. So their proposal is still being approved by their board. As far as the city office is concerned, we've talked with and we'll come back to the rec department. But the office is concerned. We've talked with the county and the health nurse in conjunction with them that we'd like to open up our building to the general public on the 15th, which would be on Friday. If you notice, we have a cough guard in place for our employees up front to open up. And then on Monday, the 18th, I'd like to bring most employees back to work. Not open the other buildings up to general public. I'd like to keep them closed to the general public per se. Those buildings don't normally have people there anyway. So we could leave them closed to the general public at this point. I would like to keep our council meeting like this until through this month, and then in June start opening that back up to normal business, providing things go in the direction that people are predicting. Do we have any other do we have any questions regarding the rec or what I just said?
I had read through what Rebecca sent us from the rec, and I had 5 points I wanted to discuss with the council on that. It had talked about the responsibility being on the patrons to hand wash. Are we providing hand sanitizer stations? Or is it go to the bathroom, use soap and water, wash your hands?
I think we have some hand sanitizer stations there, but the locker rooms aren't going to be open, so we'll have to provide something.
Okay, because it just said they're responsible for washing hands. It said nothing about hand sanitizer being provided. It had mentioned that bring your own water bottle, but you can fill your water bottle at their refill station. Working in a healthcare facility, that's just as bad as drinking out of a water fountain. So I would recommend bring your own water bottle and bring a big one. I don't see the benefit of letting them refill there if their mouth has been on the rim of the water bottle. For the time being, at least, so whenever protocols are lifted.
What's our obligation to allow bathroom facilities and water to be accessible to people when they visit the building? Don't we have an obligation there?
Mr. Morrissey?
They're locked.
But if we're opening at a limited capacity,
Hey, John, you want to come up
Can, here.
to the mic, please?
If you're even partially opened, you need to have facilities. And it ain't gonna make any difference, I suspect, if you have one restroom available for a facility. It just depends on how much use there is for the facility. We have to accommodate our public.
Well, the locker rooms can be closed. There's a bathroom up, 2 of them up front that can be used, so those are accessible. Those aren't gonna be closed, are they?
I don't know. If he didn't mention it in there, then I would assume they're going to be open.
They
Yes, the
That's-
locker rooms are going to
There's
be
2
closed.
bathrooms at the front.
Michael, are you reading it right now?
Yeah, it does say wash hands frequently, and I don't understand if they're not going to have access to a sink, how that's supposed to happen. And so let's assume that it means locker
Locker
rooms
rooms.
closed and the other bathrooms open,
Okay.
because otherwise that's cruel and unusual.
I don't know if cruel and
And then,
unusual
John,
is
do we
right.
also, as a rec facility, have to allow for them to refill or get water from us?
Yeah,
To like drink?
it kind of goes hand in hand. You're
Does it?
gonna probably have everybody expecting to rehydrate. I think that's what you do at a rec facility usually.
Is it out of our control to say bring your own water bottle?
We didn't.
I was
provide
trying to
water
imagine
bottles
the problem.
before.
No, but we provided drinking fountains.
Well, that's what it says.
Right.
Yeah, it says all patrons must use a water bottle. If they need water,
But they can
they
refill
may
them
fill
there,
it at the water dispenser.
which is just as germy.
Setting it there?
If they take them to the bathrooms and use the sink to refill them, it's no different, right?
The refillers come out the top, right?
I have no idea what's there, I'll be honest.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
have, I
set it
think
like
they
this
have a
and-
refiller. You set it in there, and then it goes by sensor that it.
Yeah, so it doesn't touch.
It doesn't
Well,
touch.
you're gonna
It
have
doesn't
people
touch anything.
patrolling.
They're going to have
Park and rec,
employees
right?
working. So yes.
If someone uses the water fountain, they can clean it after
Yeah.
the person uses it. And it's
Yeah,
ready for
and
the
that's
next
part
person.
of the restrictions from the governors. We have to be cleaning more often.
So why don't we just solve it that way? It's available, and then we'll have somebody there to
Clean.
To clean it between. It had mentioned that it would only be open to Jefferson County residents. What I wondered is that, are we still open to new members, or is it going to be existing members only? Do we know, and does that matter? I don't know if it matters. I
don't think we're taking in per se new members, especially if they're from outside the county because of.
well, yeah, it says Jefferson County only,
Yeah.
but
So I'm not sure what his
what thoughts are on that.
was there.
How are you gonna determine if they're?
It says they're going to ID them.
Look at their driver's license.
Is the
and address.
rationale to prevent people from high-risk areas coming to Jefferson County?
Yes.
Because
think that's a-
they're,
They're not going to allow. They're not going to allow day memberships right now, which they have in the past, and that is because people from high-risk areas coming here to
So
work.
why don't we
on
just
the
word it
site.
that way? I mean, you came up from Van Buren, that's a low risk than in our county. How many members are we talking about here outside the county?
It is today, but it may not be tomorrow.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I agree.
No, I support them being our county. I just didn't know if we were also going to limit new memberships. I don't know if that matters either. If they're
I'm not-
within the county, we're going to Hy-Vee and Walmart with them probably.
Right.
So-
I'm not sure what his thoughts are there.
Okay.
I can.
My
get
fourth
that.
point was, and I don't remember, and you've got it in front of you right now because I can't look at both these at the same time. They had talked about in the phase 2, they were going to put a time limit on the weight room so that people can make an appointment, do their lifting, get in, get out, clean, next person. And I'm wondering on phase 1, the opening of the Sportsplex, if they should consider a time limit as well, even for the people who are walking and coming in for equipment in phase 1, so that we can get as many people in and out as we possibly can. So you don't have someone who goes in and walks for 2 hours and utilizes one of our clicker numbers. So I was going to recommend putting a time limit on their phase 1 rollout as well. They've talked about it in phase 2 and 3. So just so we can get as many members in and out as we can. And the last part, and I may be beating a dead horse, is the phase 1 hours completely omit anybody who has a 9-to-5 job or an 8-to-5 job, which most of the essential workers would like to be getting into the gym. And I think it's 8 to 4:30 is when they're reopening.
Yep.
So that eliminates all of us that used to go to the gym before we went to work or after we got off. And a lot of the people who are working, I'm not going to say want it, a lot of them need it as a stress relief right now. So I don't know if they would be willing to consider extending it on the back end or upping it on the front end and modifying it so that if you have an office job, or even if it's not an office but a 9-to-5, you can get in on one half of the day or the other.
We just add Saturday? Is there a reason?
I don't know what
Yeah.
what him and the board.
That's
said
part
at
of
this point.
phase 2, I think.
Which would be after their June meeting,
Yeah.
and then it'd probably have to come back to us, so it would be after our first meeting in June.
And that's, I mean,
Looking at
that's
almost a
1 day a
month.
week for people who are in offices and sitting at desks 5 days a week. I didn't know if the board or the advisory committee would consider
10
amending
to 6:30 makes more sense.
something so they can get there before or after work. Because it just seems very, I mean, it seems very, and I know we're limiting it for a reason, but it seems very omitting of those people who are working a job right now.
I assume that's where most of the high traffic is, in the early mornings and late after work is where most of the high traffic is
Yeah.
anyway. So maybe we take off in the middle of the day and open up in the evenings and early morning. So take off from 10 to 2 or 12 to 2 or something like that, and add an hour.
I just didn't know if they would
Each end.
consider that or if we can encourage them to consider it. I don't know what our role is with the Park and Rec board.
Well, they're advisory to us, but at the same time, for us to then change what they put in place. So basically, what they had is an 8 to 5 workday, Monday through Friday for their staff.
For their staff, yeah.
So that 4:30 to 5 was cleaning. So they start at 8, end at 5 days a week. Maybe that's budgetary because with so few people coming in,
Possibly.
you know, they're looking at the budget. So yeah, I wish we could have been discussing that with them.
With
or
them, yeah.
Had them come here,
Well,
somebody come here.
That's what I'm saying, we could take a block of time out of the middle, make a split shift, add hours in the morning, in the evening, so we can get those people who want to come in before and after work. Just an idea.
I will send those to Calvin and see if he can get those in place, and then I'll report back to you by email after tonight.
And like I said, none of
See
them are
what
make
we
it or
can
break
do
it. I'm
more.
glad that we're trying to get it open back up. I'm just trying to think of the people that really want to utilize it, that are working right now and can't go 8 to 4:30.
If there are issues with any of those things, then I'll let you know, and then we can,
And
as
good
we
luck
go.
finding hand sanitizer.
You never know. As we go.
And ultimately, you know, Calvin does have the authority to govern his own department
Right. He
without
does,
coming to us. So it was kind of a courtesy for them to show us this. My only concern was requirement to wear a mask the entire time.
That's going to be really hard.
I can't exercise with the mask on. I'd pass out. So that's, you know,
I thought about writing that, but I see why they're doing it.
yeah, I guess you just got to go slower.
I also had an email regarding, I think it's point number 7. We are unable to allow trainers to work with clients in our facilities for safety reasons. This person wrote, She'd like to have an exception that trainers whose sole livelihood comes from training. Here's how it might work. Given that the downstairs weight room will be closed to the public, maybe it could be used by the few trainers who fit this category. They could have a schedule whereby only one trainer uses the room at a time to train only one client at a time. Both parties would wear masks and keep an appropriate distance from each other. They would also wipe down the equipment as soon as they had finished with it. She said she knew only one trainer that fits this category, and she said, unfortunately, this person did not qualify for unemployment or Social Security, and so this is his only means of support. And she was concerned about his livelihood and being able to sustain himself. So,
What's Chris Estill's opinion on that? Do we know?
I don't know. This email just came this morning. So,
And I think the opening of the room that they're referring to, even for partial use, was phase 2, right? It's not even considered in phase 1.
Yeah, it wouldn't be till June.
Yeah, so
I got the same message.
There's a lot of folks that are going to want to get into the weight room, so I think if you're opening it up to specific people, you're going to open up a can of worms. And that's probably why Calvin didn't look at opening that up. And cleaning the
equipment.
The weight room facility and equipment is a lot more difficult than anything else. So Calvin got that email. I got that email.
Okay.
And I'm going to let Calvin respond to that one as far as he's concerned and what's best for his department there.
Okay.
Well, Chris should be able to answer this question because there are lots of people who need assistance that involves close contact in the world. So how are they solving the problem? So let's do it the same way if it's possible.
You can have him look into it.
okay. So, yeah, Aaron, if you'll take all these points and go over them with Calvin and let us know as soon as possible so that we can get it out to the public on Thursday, preferably.
Well, he'll have that
Yeah.
posted. So
Yeah. Okay.
And you're proposing that city council meet in the same or typical configuration, not this next meeting, but the first meeting in June?
no, I would say we meet in this configuration the last meeting of May, which is
Right.
the 26th, but then we would go back to normal that first meeting in June,
Right.
which I can't read the calendar from here.
8th.
The 8th.
You said that.
If you're not comfortable with that, we can discuss it in May or on the next meeting and adjust at that point.
Yeah, I think that may be the
We could.
prudent, given to see where
Sure.
the state is in terms
Yeah,
of instructions.
I wanted to get through May for sure for
Yeah.
us as a council before we changed. So that's why I just said that. But if you want to reevaluate at the next council meeting, I think we're more than okay with doing it that way.
Yes, yes, I would.
And do you want to just, you or Rebecca, go through the changes as far as these emergency procedures, what we're actually on today, on right now? You know, we kind of diverted to Park and Rec.
Well, yeah. Do you remember exactly? Do you have the highlighted changes? Okay.
A lot of it was just working through the wording since, the initial thing was just for a short time period. But now that it's drawn out more, we made the wording that
left the majority of the
I was just trying to think of, Paul, if you could help me with that.
Made it more flexible.
According
with city
to
administration.
Yes, because we're also looking at the contingencies of what the governor would have to say, or even the president in the nationals. So we knew that there were some open-ended
right.
things that we don't have control of, but yet we would be expected to comply also coming up with. And so the wording was something to the effect we were talking about loosening or tightening, and we decided better is just moving with those in those. Sorry.
The phrase was "or otherwise modified."
Or otherwise modified.
Right.
Thank you. That was the exact phrase.
Because they might be tightened in the next 2 months. We
Right.
don't know.
Yes.
We just wanted to make sure the city had flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then we took the date, May 15th on page, well, these aren't numbered, but under City Hall, we took the date May 15th out and put it under the city administrator's direction, right? Stuff like that.
That was the majority of the changes. There wasn't a lot of functional change other than to try and leave it open-ended so that, A, we could function and change with the times, but yet also not have to come back to council every time to say, hey, we're going to do this or we're going to do that. Or
Right.
So we did a bit of wording on the issue of delinquent bills and shut-offs and that kind of thing.
Yes.
To make it a little bit more flexible so that as we go down the road here, as things change, Aaron can decide, you know, when to institute those charges again or those shut-offs again.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, and you want to give us an update on that because that was extended.
Yeah, it was
regarding
extended
water.
through the end of this month, so we aren't leaving any, or we aren't adding late fees or shut-offs through this month. So we'll wait till the end of the month, and then we'll contact those of folks that are behind and say, you need to notify us within the next 2 weeks or 15 days of what you plan to do. If we don't hear from you within the next 15 days, so that would be about June 15th, then we will shut you off. But otherwise, it'll be a work on your payment plan some way, somehow.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so we can we now have a motion for the amended emergency procedures?
So moved.
Moved by Anderson,
Second.
second by Toohill. Any other discussion?
So we're just approving this document that personnel worked on. We're not approving
Correct.
the Park and Rec
Correct.
document that Calvin
Yes.
sent us by email.
Correct.
Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Rasmussen. Yes. Flournoy.
Yes.
Okay, that was unanimously approved to approve that amended emergency procedures. Okay, the next resolution, consideration of resolution amending the resolution adopted August 28, 2017, authorizing the issuance of a taxable sewer revenue capital loan note anticipation project note series 2017, authorizing execution and delivery of an amendment to project note disbursement agreement and replacement note. So in layman's language, that means
we're extending the note for construction from the end of this month, which would be June 1st to December 31st on the sewer plant note. Since it's not complete, we're not sure if we'll get complete by the end of this month. We just extended that note so that it would be the closing date would be December 31st rather than June 1st.
Are we still going to fall within the funding deadlines?
Funding deadlines as far as USDA, we're fine with USDA. This is all approved through USDA along with CoBank.
If they don't get it done by December, we'll do another extension. Is that the idea?
I hope not. Yes.
But if they don't get it finished, we'll have to,
The
right?
answer is yes.
Is there a dollar amount affiliated with this to account for the interest between now and December?
No, we're still fine as far as total budget wise that we won't have to run into that problem.
Okay.
But that brings into the discussion liquidated damages again.
Mm-hmm. Interest on a note that size for 6 months?
It's bigger.
Okay.
Okay, is there approval for this resolution?
I guess I just have one more question, why it was extended 6 months instead of just 3, or is that just the requirement? It's every 6 months that it could be extended.
That was the safe time that we felt we would be okay without having to extend it again.
So when do they actually anticipate being finished?
Uh-huh.
When do they?
That's what I'm saying.
Well, they must have given you a date before December 31st, right?
So are you asking for a posse of council members to come and stand with you when you get that answer? Okay.
We are hopeful that they are done with the majority of the work, to be quite honest, by the end of May. The only things that they would be doing past May would be the I forget what they're called, the ditches and the
Oxidation ditches.
and the tank, the insides of the tanks, the big tanks out there,
So
digester tanks.
there's no
Thank you.
prepayment penalty. We can pay this off if they get
Yes.
done.
Well, yeah. All we're doing is extending the date for the borrowing, and then we pay it off with the USDA note. So there's no penalty for extending it or anything like that.
or early payment.
It's not much more than paper shuffle and paying an attorney.
All right, I move approval.
Okay, it's been moved by Flournoy, second by Rasmussen, to approve this extension just to December 31st. Any other questions?
I'm just gonna look to the back of the room and say, should we be worried about what you were just saying?
The normal on this was going to be that we'd be moving on to step 3 by October, but this isn't normal. And USDA is working with us on our extension problem, so everybody's comfortable with talking at the back of the room, I think.
So John just said, so everyone else could hear, is that the plan hopefully is that we'll move on to step 3 by October. But they don't see an issue with extending this at this time.
Moving it to December.
Yeah. All righty. Any other questions? If not, please call the roll.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Hallie,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Toohill.
Yes.
Okay. That was approved unanimously. Ordinance number 1186. This is the second reading. Consideration of amendment providing and retraining residential customer security deposit of utility services. So this has to do with our water deposit going from $75 to $125, and it's refundable after the termination of service. So this is the second reading.
I'd move that we move it from second to third.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Anderson, second by Flournoy to approve this and move it to the third reading. Any other discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Anderson,
Yes.
Flournoy,
Yes.
Gandy,
Yes.
Rasmussen,
Yes.
Toohill,
Yes.
Ham,
Yes.
Hallie.
Yes.
Okay, under the mayor's report, I have several things. Aaron, do you want me to talk about the animal control meeting now, or you want to wait down into committee minutes?
If you want to talk about it now, that's fine.
Okay. So we, this last week, we did have, brought the animal control board together just to consult with them about our dog ordinance and to, just review it, see where we could, if we needed to, give any suggestions. We did have a situation where a dog was attacked a couple weeks ago from a pit bull. So that was part of the discussion. Basically, there were 3 action items that came out of that meeting. The first action item was that the owners be sent a letter by Scott Vaughn to make sure that the dogs got licensed if they weren't. And then 2 action items. For the safety committee, that they would relook at our fine structure. I think it was the general consensus that maybe our fines were not stiff enough. And also that the safety committee would look at how other cities enforce their ordinances such as this and come back with some ideas for the council to consider. So Katie's going to take that up. Appreciate all the people that came and participated in that meeting. I found out last week, or I was notified, that there is a group called Heartland for a Forward Study. This is a study out of Arkansas. It's a think tank that is funded by the Waltons. And the interesting thing is that they did a study on micropolitans, which we are of. That's a city between 10 and 50,000. And basically they were congratulating us because out of approximately 550 cities, we are 35 in this category who does well in our entrepreneurship. And the study is all about growing young firms that are less than 5 years old. And it's about these firms employing people and then sustaining employment. So that was kind of exciting, and congratulations to Fairfield for having good entrepreneurship. And one of the things that also was interesting in the study, and I think we'll have more. There'll be an article, I think, in the paper that'll give us some more information as well. But some of the things that came out of that cities such as our size we need to consider is some of these basic things are improving attitudes towards entrepreneurship, supporting them, establishing funds if you can, angel investors to help support entrepreneurs. Certainly other businesses helping entrepreneurs get started, particularly if there's some joint ventures that can help them. Talked about, if you have a university near you, to have them help and be involved in entrepreneurship. A lot of studies can come out of communities with universities. And one of the other big things that it talked about was to build and enhance your quality of place and amenities. So arts and culture are very important for communities. That's where people, they want to come to a town that has arts and culture. So there's things to do. So you can go to Heartland Forever and see that study. It's quite interesting. And anyway, I thought it was a neat thing that we got noticed in that. 35 out of 550, and this is in the Heartland base. Well, this is all over the country, but mostly in the Heartland. They're trying to increase entrepreneurship and economic development in the middle of the country. So anyway, it was kind of a neat study, so you can go there and look at it if you want. I have gotten a couple calls regarding supporting our restaurants. And we do have an outdoor dining ordinance, and so I'm hoping that the council will see fit to either look at this. A couple of things that have been requested have been maybe shutting down alleys for 2 or 3 hours during the day so that restaurants can have appropriate social distancing, because right now, they are at 50% capacity. That's been requested. Also, in the ordinance, it talks about using parking spaces right in front of their facility. And other thing that I thought we might be able to do is currently on May 1st of each year, there is a $50 outdoor dining fee. So those restaurants usually come in and fill out that request and pay a $50. Maybe the council would consider waiving that fee for 2020 just to help them out, because it's been very challenging for our restaurants. So I guess I'm asking, would the council want to look at that and maybe talk to some of the restaurant owners? I think that could either go through the safety committee if we're dealing with parking spaces or alleys, or it could go through economic development.
Yeah, I think we should do whatever we can to help them.
Yeah, it sounds like a good idea.
Yes.
Well, are you you mentioned ordinance. Did you mean the proposal the gentleman provided? You referenced ordinance 2 times, and I wasn't sure what ordinance you were referring to.
There's a,
Outdoor.
I don't know, is
It was
it
guidelines,
outdoor
wasn't it?
eating or guidelines for the city?
In terms of the shutting down the alleys, was that the proposal?
Well, that's what's been requested.
Okay.
So, and the
Yeah.
request was basically not all the time, but maybe a short window.
Okay, because I got a request to actually shut down the street for a period of time from another gentleman.
Yeah, I did have a request too.
Yep.
I think that's a little bit more of a challenge.
Yep. So, again, I think it would be best to hear from the restaurant owners directly. So if there's a restaurant that is adjacent to an alley and that's their wish to do so, then they can make that request. I think the citizens are well-meaning, but when they're speaking on behalf of businesses that they don't manage or own, then...
One of the requests to me was from a restaurant owner
So please, yeah.
about alley and parking.
Okay.
We do
So
have some
that's what
alleys
that-
too, though, where that's the only access to some other businesses, right?
The pedestrian alley on the north
Yeah.
side, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's closed to traffic
So we
Yeah.
should,
for that
we should
section.
do this on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, if they're from
Yeah.
the owners of the business itself, if they're asking for
But
it.
the
then-
fee we can waive
Right.
generally.
I think we'd also want to know about UPS and FedEx deliveries too, because some of those have to use alley doorways to bring the freight in.
Yeah,
So
trash removal,
yeah,
the oil from the restaurants is removed from the back.
because
too.
saying 2 to 3 hours, that'd be a busy time, I think.
Well, when you say shut it down, you mean to foot traffic, not to automobile.
I think that's the idea, is to close it to automobiles, so it's only foot traffic, so that tables can be set up. Is that the right?
Oh, I see what they're reversing
I get it now.
Yeah.
Right, they're asking for
I see,
extra
they want more
outdoor
spaces
seating
on tables.
space.
That wasn't
Yeah.
clear.
Yeah.
I love the idea, but I was just thinking of what other traffic would be utilizing those during that time of day. And those people that run on those heavy daily schedules like that, where they just got to make that drop, that
Yeah.
if we're asking them to put more foot traffic on to carry it to a different doorway, that
The
Gonna mess them
outdoor
up.
eating requirements, there is a provision to use the alley. There's also a provision for the parking lots. But I think I'm pretty sure in the parking lots, they're supposed to have some sort of raised platform.
Yeah,
And I don't
And that's
remember.
for safety reasons.
Yeah, I don't remember if that's the same case for the alley or not.
the alleys were
But-
never part of that.
Not part of that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think safety wise, you got to be careful a little bit about the alleys, but because you're still going to have to get people or police or something in the alleys at some time or another. So, I think it's worth looking at, and I definitely think it's a case by case thing that we should look at.
Yeah.
Well, we're only talking about an hour or two during lunchtime
Well,
and maybe
yeah,
at dinner time.
that's the question. Is it daytime,
When is
weekday,
that?
or
Couple hours.
evening and
Right.
weekends? Because that's completely different.
I'd say we wait until we have an official request in front of us to worry about the alleys.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's too complicated.
But,
Okay, so would you like the request to come to full council then and deal with it case by case at that point?
I'd say go to
Or would
committee,
you like
wouldn't it?
to,
I'd
call
say
it-
it starts at committee.
Yeah.
There's, yeah. That's, I mean, I think that's the appropriate channels to start at committee.
right,
sure, yours and mine. I'll take it if you want.
I'm on both.
Actually,
so-
you're actually on mine, so.
okay, so you want to refer to economic
Economic
development?
development, sure.
Okay, so is there,
fine.
could I have a motion then to refer that to Economic Development Committee?
So moved.
Moved by Gandy,
and I'll second that.
second by Ham. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. So I'll help get some word out to the restaurant owners, and if you can let me know when that meeting is, and we can
Yeah.
let those people know too.
Yeah, just have them send the request and then we'll schedule a meeting.
Okay, great, thank you very much. How do you want to, you'll deal with the $50
At that time.
at the
Yeah,
same
at
time?
that time too.
Okay, great. The last thing, no, it's not the last thing. I wanted to mention that the hospital is starting to use gowns that we have been making here locally. And so if we have additional seamstresses that want to participate, please go to the Jefferson County Public Health and pick up those gowns with instructions and sew them up and get them back to public health. The last thing that I want to mention is that it is National Police Week, and so thank your officers for their service to our community. And this Friday is Peace Officers Memorial Day on May 15th. And we've been fortunate enough to only have one reserve officer that has lost his life in our community. That was back in 1970, July 27th, the officer's name. It was a reserve officer, Billy Sutherland. And some people might not know that the angel in the park at Christmas time that holds the Christmas tree was given by his wife and his children in memory of Mr. Sutherland. And anyway, I remember this time even as a little girl because my father was on the police reserve at that time too. So, and as I recall, I believe he's the one that found the gun that killed Mr. Sutherland. So anyway, we want to just thank the police officers for their service, our sheriff's department and our police department and our dispatch for the service they do to our community, and thank you to the Sutherland family for sharing Billy with us. And we're, you know, it's a tough one when we lose someone, but we've also been very fortunate that we've only lost him in service in many years. So thank your local police officers. So that's all I have. And so let's move on to the city attorney report, and John has something to share with us tonight.
Oops, I need the space. Well, we had a closed session on the 27th, and we were anticipating that we might be coming into some litigation. Within the last week, on the 5th of May, our councilman on the 28E agency, Ambulance Service Agency, was served with paperwork, which was like what we were anticipating. So we are now parties to a lawsuit as defendants. Paul is also an individual named defendant. I want to talk about that a little bit. And last week, a couple of days, myself, the county attorney, assistant county attorney, and Vanessa Willman for the hospital met. We went over the pleadings. We went over the circumstances on each entity's being served. We think there aren't any errors in the way the thing started. But at this point, I want to tell you a little bit about where we are as far as defense. And I also want to tell you about something that is out there that was there the last time we were in a suit like this, a little different facts. But we got a communication from Tom Gamreth, who is the local spokesperson for ICAP. And also Tom communicates with the company that is representing the hospital. Board of Supervisors and the city are represented by Iowa Community Assurance Pool. And essentially what Tom said is you're going to need to make a decision shortly as far as whether you folks that are your designated attorneys representing your individual bodies are going to defend this, or whether you're going to wait and see after ICAP and Chubb Company for the hospital investigate whether they will tender a defense. And Tom said, but at the same time, you don't want to leave them out of the loop, because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you breach your insurance contracts. And what that means basically is we have a duty not later than 30 days after we are aware that we have been placed in litigation by someone making claims, to alert our insurers that that has happened. We have to go into it with the idea that even though we may have what we think is a slam dunk defense on this, that it's never good to assume, and that there is a potential for loss and claims paid necessity that each of these insurance entities want to know about, and they want to have a part in deciding whether they're going to tender up a retained insurance counsel to either assist us or to replace us. Last time we had a lawsuit, it started in 2012. We got a ruling in 2013. We came out with the best result possible. We had 0 awarded to the plaintiff, and the court commented that if we wanted to, it looked like we could pursue claims against the defendant for things that came out in the lawsuit. Wasn't very much, but it was reassuring that we were right about what we thought. That suit was about contract disagreements and contract disputes, what our ICAP coverage goes to, and what they did, what is called a reservation of rights back then, about was that our insurance is for negligent acts of our entity and our employees, and contract disputes and so forth are not within the scope of what we buy insurance for. So our guy with the street department that drives a pickup truck into the side of somebody else at a red light is definitely going to draw the coverage of ICAP, but our disagreeing back then with American Ambulance and Mr. Hutnick, who was the plaintiff in that case, didn't draw their representation or their coverage. So we were kind of left to our own devices by the insurance company's position they took at that time. They also questioned their responsibility for any of the individual defendants, which again was the city designee to the 28E, the County Board of Supervisor designee, and the hospital board representative at that time. And they reserved any representation concerning those individuals. So what happened is the Board of Supervisors went to the county attorney and said, well, can you represent our supervisor then? County attorney said, we can represent the supervisor in his capacity as an official, but we can't represent him as an individual because we're specifically barred by a statute from representing individuals. That didn't apply to me as far as the city attorney, and it didn't apply to the attorney that represented the hospital. By the time it all got sorted, Craig Foss was appointed to represent the individual Board of Supervisor member, and the county attorney basically disclaimed any interest in being involved in the representation in that suit. And so Craig represented the county and the hospital, and I represented the city through that all the way through trial, which was 5 years after the suit got filed. So these things can turn into sort of never-ending stories, but that's where we were then with our insurance company, which is still the same insurance company. This time what Tom Gamrath is saying to us is you have coverage if you want them to get involved right now during this response time that you have for the next couple weeks is when you should be talking to them about whether you want them involved or not. This isn't a contract dispute per se at this point. They're claiming that we did some things under the open meetings law and the public records law that are violations, and that they want injunctive relief against the 28E board and also against the individuals that are on the board, which is Paul, Julie Greason, and Lee Dimmitt. We disagree completely, but what it turns out is that even though the facts are different and it's not a contract dispute, instead it's arising under statute, what we concluded between the four attorneys in the last two meetings we had was we're still stuck with insurance companies that are going to take the position that they probably don't have to offer a representation because it's about statutory violations of open meetings and public records at this point, which I guess my reaction to that is that sucks. And I told Tom that I said, you know, insurance companies are insurance companies, and we can tell them, all right, why don't we start this out by having a declaratory action to determine if you have to help us or not, because we pay an awful lot of money each year to ICAP. And Tom said, well, I don't know, you want to get in that kind of a contest with them right away? And I said, I don't want to get in a contest with them at all, but you know, if there is a chance that they're going to say we screwed up their contract by taking this on ourselves when we've already assessed it this way, then I want them to tell us right now, because if they don't, I don't want it coming up if we have a lawsuit that goes to trial 3, 4, 5 years from now, because there won't be anybody over there at that group at ICAP that remembers us by then. And that was kind of the experience we had the last time. So What I'm saying is, at this point, the four of us lawyers think that we're going to tender a defense for each of the individuals that were sued individually. We think it's meant to intimidate. I don't think you can intimidate Paul, but I say that with a smile on my face, Paul, because I know you'll stand your ground. But it's harassing and it's intimidating to make people that are doing an official duty have to defend in an individual capacity. But I think that's exactly what has been done by Midwest lawyers in this situation. Secondly, we'll tender the defense with all of us signing off on the 28E agency, but in explaining that to you, I want you to understand there may be some correspondence going back and forth between ICAP and Chubb companies and so forth that looks like somebody's mad at somebody. I wouldn't say I'm mad, I'm just not liking that we have to cope with their insurance reservations at the same time that we have in the next couple weeks the necessity of doing a defense, making a responsive pleading, trying to get back to the real facts in the case. So if you have some questions about what I just said to you about that particular insurance predicament, this wouldn't be a bad time to talk about it. I didn't put this down as closed session because this litigation isn't going to be secret anymore. It's filed in the courthouse as of mid-April. It was filed 3 weeks before they served Paul or the other people as defendants in this case. So it was filed before we were done with our dealing that they're saying we did wrongly. And so one of the defenses we're going to raise is that they filed a suit that is not ripe for adjudication, and it shouldn't have been filed until after we were done with our negotiating with Care Ambulance that is ultimately going to be the provider. But we just got their contract back on May 6th. So in the meantime, they had a 3-week jump on us and sued us for something they said we were doing illegally that we hadn't done yet, even though we did it legally. But anybody have any questions about the insurance angle that we're going to have to deal with while we defend this?
You referenced our four attorneys are going to. Who are the four and
Well,
who do they
there's
represent?
me, there's the county attorney, there's an assistant county attorney, Pat McAban, which is usually at the 28E board meetings, and there is Vanessa Willman from Foss Kiken. She's usually at the meetings. Craig may also be involved in this. Craig is actually the named attorney on the hospital's designated attorney sheet. So it's possible there'd be 5 attorneys on this pleading signature line at some point. But we will defend this as a group like we did before, unless somebody says, now let's see what the insurance companies want to do and who they send down and so forth, and whether they take reservation of rights on these facts like they did back in 2012. In the meantime, our time is running. We have a clock that for Paul, we got another 20 days after the 5th. I don't think anybody was served any earlier than you, Paul. I may be off by 1 day.
The process server was in on the 5th. I think she got all 3 of us.
I think she got all of you the same day, but anyway. It's a good question. Other questions?
They didn't sue the city then with that, or are we in conjunction
They
with?
sued the 2080 agency, which we're part of.
Right.
And if there's a judgment against the agency, we get to share it equally with the other entities in the agency. In 2012, we were relatively new to our 2080 agreement, but when we were looking at a defense against $285,000, that was explained that we'd be on the hook for 1/3 of that if they got a judgment for that. So we don't know what these folks' claims are so far. They're just saying that we did something wrong and that it damaged them, and that they ought to have an injunction against us proceeding any further with what we're doing with care, and we ought to have an injunction against us. They're accusing us of being in the process of destroying all the records of what we've been doing for the last 2 years. They say the records between January of 2018 and right now are at risk of being destroyed, because that's the kind of people we are in this 2080 agency. And essentially, I can't wait to get over and tell the judge what I think of that. So as far as what they say and what they can prove, right now, between the lawyers' meetings last week, we have about 10 to 12 affirmative defenses. Some of them sound like about the same thing, but essentially, Paul is vested with a statutory defense that if he believes in good faith, acting officially, that what he's doing is legal, that's what is called a good faith defense. And what does that do for Paul is it gives him a right not to be penalized $100 to $5,000 for violating open meetings or public records. And 2 of those violations, if proven intentional by him, would be a grounds to remove him. They're not going to get there in this situation, but that's the intimidation part of sticking somebody individually with this. Same story for Lee Dimmitt, same story for Julie Greason. They're acting in their official capacities. They have a right to rely on that good faith affirmative defense. There's a second part of it that is just as strong, and it's been upheld by the courts a number of times, and that is that an official on a board that acts under either the public records or the open meetings, relying on the advice of their counsel, and that's me, that's the county attorney, that's the attorney for the hospital. They rely on that advice of counsel, or they rely on an attorney general's opinion, or they rely on an opinion of the Iowa Supreme Court. They are, again, availing themselves of an affirmative defense that's in the statute. So Paul will be afforded both of those defenses, along with defenses that have to do with this thing not being ripe when they filed it. It's something that they really don't have a cause of action anymore, because as of right now, Nanette down at the hospital, who is the secretary to the 2080 agency, and Vanessa have complied with requests they made 2 months ago for Midwest Ambulance for all our records since 2018. Those are sent to them as of today to be reviewed and to show them that we aren't standing by a shredding machine disposing of records that they want us enjoined from doing. Beyond that, there are other defenses that have to do with what is called a non-judiciable controversy. In other words, if they say that we do this because we have some malice towards them, we're going to get into a spin on that where we're going to contend that they tried to obstruct our process in going forward with another entity on the bid for this service after they were told that we didn't like your bid. You refused to accept our own RFP as far as criteria to bid, and their bid was $120,000 higher than the next bid, which is the one we accepted. I think they're probably going to try to throw some smoke at us by saying, yeah, but the city was in this, and the city was bidding also. Well, the city bid didn't get accepted. So what difference does that make? The city's in the same boat that the plaintiff is. Plaintiff didn't present an acceptable bid. I call it the sour grapes defense. They should have done a better bid if they wanted some different outcome. But anyway, at this point, we will be back to you and probably get into more detail about what our defenses are and how we support them in the future. But right now, I want you to be aware we've got those insurance issues, and we are in the process of doing what we think we need to make this case moot. And essentially, that's another affirmative defense, that since they've got the records and they can see that we didn't destroy them, what's there left to fight about? And at that point, if they say in some way that those records are going to show that somehow they got tricked out of their winning the RFP, these are people that haven't wanted to do us any favors for the last 5 years. And they refused to amend contracts when we wanted more information. 2 years ago, coming into the summertime, we had, or I guess it was 2019, we had consultants work with us and tell us they couldn't believe they couldn't get any information about our financials because we've been locked out of that by Midwest. And they said everybody they consult with gives them figures to work with. Well, we can't do that because they say that's proprietary and they haven't been giving it to us. So we did have some information from the prior operators before them, so it wasn't a complete dark hole. But these guys, if they're going to try to turn around now and say somehow that we did something to them, they're going to have to live with what they've done or not done for us for the last 4 or 5 years. So anyway, enough said about where we are on this at this point, but I expect somebody probably in the union ledger world will discover that this lawsuit's been on file since mid-April and probably have some questions eventually. And I guess I would caution we don't need to talk about this very much. I'll try to bring you information about this. If there would be a need because of something that we get into either with Tommy Gamreth or with ICAP or with Chubb, the insurance company people and their representatives, we may have to come back to you sooner than the next council meeting. But I think probably the point of telling you about all of this is we're probably going to have several discussions like this, and most of the time I'll probably do it under the open meetings law, exception that it allows us to talk about pending litigation without letting everybody in on it. So I've told you about as much as I'm going to tell you publicly, but I expect as we get into this thing, there will be a lot of information that comes out of this. We're giving them also an opportunity when we file our responses on behalf of the individuals and on behalf of the 2080 agency to consider dismissing this before it turns into counterclaims also. And if we're going to do counterclaims, I'll be back to you with a list of things that we believe could be claimed back against them, but we probably won't do that until after we've done something called initial discovery. So at this point, if you have other questions about what I just told you about defending Paul and defending 2080, ask away, but I'll sit down.
I will say the 2080, the agency, I think we did a really good job of due diligence, of vetting each and every proposal, entity that was proposing to offer us an ambulance service beyond Midwest Ambulance's termination or end of their contract, which is the end of September, including Midwest, and we gave everybody a fair shot. And we picked who we thought was the best one. Simple as that.
I would chime in that having sat on that committee, that Nanette is amazing, like on top of it, and I would never have any doubt about the minutes she provides. She's timely, thorough. She has amazing minutes.
Yeah, I've known her for 50 years as Orville's daughter, and I just kind of laughed when I read the thought that somebody sitting over there at the hospital clerical area shredding stuff, you know, that's just not what Orville's daughter would do. And anyway, I don't know if she likes being referred to as Orville's daughter, but she's a good kid, I guess is what I would say. But I call everybody kids, okay?
All right. Thank you, John. Really appreciate that update. And we'll look forward to hearing more good news. Okay, let's go on to committee and board reports. Public safety.
I do not have minutes submitted, and I apologize. I went from night to night to 2 different meetings, and then the week ran away. We took no official action at public safety. We did meet a week ago on Monday, the 4th. And we only had one item to discuss, and it was right-of-way parking. And it was kind of a precursor discussion to a right-of-way permit that Melanie's working on. So we wanted to have this discussion prior to that permit being drawn up. And the only lack of action we had was to refer some suggestions to Mr. Morrissey to have him write them up for the committee to review. So we're looking at parking in the right-of-way in both residential, commercial, and manufacturing areas. And we're looking at amendments to sections 10, 11, and 20 in our city code. And we'll ask Mr. Morrissey to write those up for the committee to consider and then bring to council. So that's kind of what we addressed at public safety.
Great, thank you. Mental Health Awareness Month. Make it okay. Michael?
Real quick, before I get to that, I'd like to address one thing real quick. Clean up the code language in regard to the Animal Control Board. Currently, they're a review board only, so I talked to Katie about her committee, when they get in there, to make whatever amendments in terms of fees that they also add a line that allows that board to be an advisory board. I think the board itself would appreciate that. Otherwise, they only meet when a citizen has an appeal or a variance request, which could be every decade or so. So I'll move to have the Public Safety and Transportation Committee look at amending the Animal Control Board, the ordinance language, to allow them to be an advisory board to the council instead of what they are currently, which is just an appeal board for citizens.
So they would advise their decision to us to approve.
Basically what they did last week, and
So
just
second
make
that
it
motion.
official.
Okay, so it's been moved by Hallie, second by Flournoy, to make the Animal Control Board a advisory board to the council. Any questions on that? If not, please call the roll.
Hallie?
Yes.
Flournoy?
Yes.
Excuse me. Gandy?
Yes.
Toohill?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Ham?
Yes.
Rasmussen?
Yes.
Great, that was passed unanimously. Thank you, Michael, for that suggestion.
You're welcome. All right, so Mental Health Awareness Month, it's the month of May. The Healthiest State Initiative, which is a government-supported but privately funded organization, I think the name says it all, to make Iowa the healthiest state in the country, has a new focus. They started a couple years ago of mental health. And mental health is something that a lot of people kind of get caught up on and have a little difficulty talking about. So the Make It Okay campaign is something that the state of Minnesota started in 2012 and found success with. It's basically just encouraging people to be okay talking about mental health, not make such a big deal about it, and to reduce the stigma around mental health. So I'm not going to go through the whole presentation, but this website has a lot of great information on it and resources. But some of the points are 1 in 5 people will deal with some kind of mental health issue in their lifetime. If you think about Fairfield, that's 2,000 people. So, you're going to meet people who've had a mental health issue. And one of the ways to make it easier to talk about is you talk about it the same way you would a physical health issue. So if somebody says, they had their tonsils removed, you just say, oh, wow, okay, no big deal. If someone's like, well, I'm dealing with depression, just be that same easiness about it. Don't have to add any sort of awkwardness in that conversation. Now, the city of Fairfield, we don't deal with public health. That's the county and the state. But I don't know about you, but I've been on the council for a while, and I've talked to some citizens and been in some uncomfortable situations where a citizen was kind of going beyond a conversation that I could help with, where it wasn't really about city issues anymore. It started to become about personal issues. So if you ever get in that situation, you're not sure how to respond, I recommend reading some of these points here. Just what's the right thing to say, what's the wrong thing to say. Really helpful in our role as city officials. I did talk to Police Chief Thomas. I want him to speak briefly about the jail diversion program the police department has been working with a couple years now. And that's, again, keeping people who have mental health issues out of jail if possible. A lot of people who are suffering from a mental health issue, they're not going to get the care they need in jail, and they're not really, they're better served to be, if possible, diverted into a mental health care facility. So, Chief, do you want to just talk about that briefly?
Thank you, Mr. Howley. Yeah, Mr. Howley's right. We identified several years ago, and I think we discussed with council, we had some scary concerns when we were, some of our newer officers were saying, I've been called to this house with this person in mental health crisis so much, I'm just waiting for them to step over the line so I can charge them with something because there's nothing else we have the ability to do. And we sat down with the group. Fortunately, we were already discussing with our mental health professionals in the community. This isn't working. We need to tackle this problem. The police are going to be the first ones there, so we have to get some training for our officers so they're not just waiting. I'm happy and proud to say, because of the local cooperation already existing, it was a very easy step. We actually were one of the first police departments in our area, along with Burlington. In Southeast Iowa, Fairfield and Burlington were the first initial CIT teams, which are crisis intervention teams. We've been doing it for several years. It is just everybody is extremely happy with it because when somebody is in crisis, like Mr. Howley said, it's a medical issue. They've been doing great, and now they're having a crisis. Instead of our officers having to continue going back, we send one of our CIT trained officers to help that person, get them usually outpatient help, sit with them at the hospital.
Chief,
Yes, sir.
CIT?
It's our crisis intervention team, sorry. It's nationwide. We, like I said, Burlington, ours were the first two agencies to get involved with having instructors. We still actually do have an instructor. Lieutenant Julie Kinsella is an instructor for the area. She teaches other officers how to respond during crisis intervention. So we've been doing it for long enough now. So, 5 or 6 years. We're excited now. They're actually teaching at the academy. So the Iowa law enforcement, so all the new officers coming out, instead of having a CIT team, most of our officers now are trained in crisis intervention. And it's just, instead of the officers, like we discussed earlier, having to go back several times, we get that person the help. It's usually outpatient. Our Optime is extremely helpful in keeping a couple hours open every day for people in crisis. It works out nice because our jail diversion coordinator that we meet quarterly with is also an Optime counselor. So, I have Rochelle in my phone. So if we see somebody that ends up in jail that's having mental health issues, we can address those. And then she tries to work with them once they get out, because that's the part we were missing. Once they get out, it's tough to get their medicine going again, and especially out of jail. And Optime, the private sector, kind of took on that responsibility, and they're really helping with making sure they don't end up back in jail, because they don't need to be there. If it's a mental health issue, they need the mental health treated. So we're very proud of, and Mr. Howley was right. We try to encourage the community, instead of being worried about somebody in a mental health crisis. Let's try to help them and get through the crisis. And it's like cancer or anything else. You just have your good days and your bad days. They're having a bad day. So call the officers. We'll get a CIT member out there, talk to them, and they'll decide if what course of action. But a lot of times it's just taking them to an outpatient appointment. So as you can tell, I'm pretty proud of the program. It's working. Everybody's happy, even the old crusty officers that didn't think it would be helpful has said over and over, you know, I talked to somebody for 30 minutes, a CIT officer showed up and talked to him for a couple minutes, and they got in the car. We didn't have to use any force at all, and it's just a great program. So we're very happy with the outcome.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Michael, for bringing that to our attention. Administrator and department reports.
I don't have anything, so Melanie can talk about the working in the right of way.
Okay.
So it's the time of the year that people are starting to do a lot of improvements outside. A lot of people know that when they're doing improvements to their home or they're installing a fence that they need to get a building permit through planning and zoning. What we're really starting to push this year, and we'll have some proposed changes to the code later in the year. We're trying to remind people that to fill out a right-of-way permit. The right-of-way permit is important to maintain the public infrastructure, as well as to make sure that we have proper traffic and pedestrian warning in the right-of-way, and then also to make sure that the improvements meet city code. What I have here is some frequently asked questions about the right-of-way, when it's needed, when it's not needed. This is on our website. It also gives a link to the work within right-of-way permit. And then something else that we've started doing is work in the right-of-way that requires excavation, particularly a water or sewer service. Our code currently requires that contractors doing that work be licensed and bonded. So we have put together a list of contractors who have bonds and insurance on file with the city. We often get calls of, who do you recommend to do this work? Well, we do not recommend anyone in particular, but contractors who have provided us with this information are on this list that's available on the city website. So it's a win for them because they get the advertising. It's a win for us because we make sure that the contractors have the appropriate bond and insurance on file. So again, there's nothing new to approve. This is all stuff that's in our existing code. It's just the time of year that we want to point out and remind citizens that when they're working in the right of way, to contact the city to make sure that we have the proper traffic control in place. There is no fee for this permit. The only fee would be if you need to rent any traffic control. Again, we're really looking out for the pedestrian and the vehicle safety with this right now.
Great. Thank you. Any additional questions, council?
I'm just curious, when was the last time we actually had a barricade with horses? I saw that in the traffic control rental fees.
Not very often, no. It's a sawhorse style barricade.
I see.
I just wondered if someone has a fence and then they are redoing the fence, does that present a problem? Do they need to?
If it's the same size, material, height, all that kind of stuff, you're painting it, no. But a lot of people change the height or something like that when they redo a fence. So we would encourage them to call City Hall to make sure that they're not putting in something that's not compliant with city code that will cause us all problems later.
Great. Any other additional questions, council? If not, I'd like to note that our next meeting will be on Tuesday, May 26th, because the 25th is a holiday. So I would take a motion to adjourn until May 26th.
So moved.
So moved by Toohill.
Second.
Second by Anderson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Meeting adjourned.